My name's Liz Ginis, Communications and Marketing Director of RDA Sydney. Today I have the great pleasure of being joined by Selena Stevens, CEO of RDA Illawarra Shoalhaven. Hi Selena, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for joining me on this
No worries.
chilly winter's day.
I know, I feel like winter's just snuck up on us.
For those who aren't familiar
Mhm.
with the region, would you mind giving us a little bit of an overview?
Wollongong, Shellharbour, Kiama, and Shoalhaven, and the Jervis Bay Territory, which everyone knows is full of cultural heritage and amazing beaches. For us, geographically, Wollongong, we say it's about an hour and a half out of Sydney, so right down the motorway, which is great for business and for commuters and for economic development. And then you've got the Shoalhaven right down to the end and Milton Ulladulla, which again, stunning beaches, great tourism, amazing hospitality, and really strong industry. So that's us.
Yeah, not to mention that very impressive escarpment that sits behind Wollongong, stretches down.
We say we sit between the mountains and the sea, and I always say as an organisation, we're a skinny patch along the coast, but a really vibrant and diverse one.
Now, my understanding is that you have the third largest economy in New South Wales. Is that correct?
In some industries, yeah, but and when I go back to the point around skinny patch, massive industry, we've got everything from major tech companies, startups, defense industry, professional services, healthcare and social assistance, and kind of everything in between.
This is a good segue to a recent report that RDA Illawarra Shoalhaven has released, the State of the Workforce report, which on looking at it is an incredibly comprehensive piece of work.
It is. And that was something that was 12 months in the making. And for us, it was really important. So it originally started as a bit of a look into workforce shortages tied to major projects. So large scale infrastructure. And for us, that was, although a great piece of work, we were really curious to kind of see what were the generalized workforce constraints. So right down to the occupations. And so we thought, you know what, we're a federal agency. We should probably talk to federal data. So working with Jobs and Skills Australia's Atlas, we were able to kind of really hone in onto what are the constraints, but also what are the opportunities that we can have as a region when it comes to workforce issues.
My reading of it, it looks like there's a critical skilled workforce shortage, which I'm sure is not unique to your region.
Yeah, look, workforce issues and constraints, whatever you would like to call them, we know it's not exclusive to us. But for me, it was really about the purpose of this report is to couple the data with business insights. So you'll see in our report, there's a real emphasis on what business and what industry think the solutions are, because I'm of the opinion that a role of an RDA should be one that listens to community, listens to industry, and then communicates that information, whether that be to government, other industries, private enterprise, whoever that may be. So for us, this report is, again, 12 months in the making, and that was very intentional on our behalf. We didn't want to rush into the solutions. We didn't want to assume what we thought might have been the magic wand. And this report is really grounded in insights, obviously backed by data.
And I imagine engagement with local businesses and local community as well.
Yeah, and so that's really important. And we said this at the launch event. I said, people who live and breathe these issues, they're going to have a deeper understanding in terms of what the solutions could be than I ever will. So for me, I go, well, our role in this report is really bringing those solutions to life and saying, well, actually, there are things that government can do. It might take a few years, but there are things that we can work together on to solve some of the challenges.
So in my reading of the report, there looks like there's three key themes in terms of addressing these issues. There's attraction, there's retention, and then there's resilience. I was hoping you wouldn't mind spending a little bit of time today talking us through those three elements.
Yeah, sure. You are right. It was really important for us to kind of thematically structure the report so it made sense. So, attraction is about attracting new talent, both to the region and also a bit of a, how would I put this, like a reputation piece. 'Cause there's this real misconception that if you work in a regional area, you won't have a thriving career, and that couldn't be further from the truth. We have, as I mentioned, variety of industries, but for us, it's about attracting the talent. And then the other flip side of that coin is retention. So when someone does move to the area, how do they stay here? And conversely, if they grew up in the area, how do they stay here as well and work? So some of those, retention issues come from what we call the ancillary services. So what does childcare look like for returning mums to work, or parents, mums or dads? What does getting to work look like? So what are the transport issues? What are the higher education issues? And so for us, it was really looking at those two flip sides to say, how are we getting workers here, but also how are we keeping them here? And also encouraging people who grew up in the area to perhaps stay here, or whether they go somewhere else and then come back. For us, I think those are two really important pieces.
Yeah, I was really interested in the reading of the report to look at either end of the spectrum, retaining youth in the area, because let's acknowledge you're 70 kilometres, down the road from Australia's biggest city, but also the other end of the spectrum as well, with mature age workers, and perhaps wanting to retrain or reskill, and their ability to do that, and also the interest from employers to take them on. Found that really interesting.
Look, for us, I always say Wollongong in particular, our proximity to Sydney is both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness, because, I did the commute to Sydney for 5 years. So it's kind of almost a bit of a rite of passage in Wollongong. But for us, it was, from an attraction perspective, looking at the typical life cycle of someone in their career. So whether they're, starting off in terms of early entry career, and then they want to develop their skills, and then they hit mid years, and then maybe they want to take some time off work, or they want to travel, or they want to start a family. And then how are we then not only just looking at that cohort, re-engaging them, but also more importantly, older Australians, older people in the region, how do we then take the skills and take their knowledge and then keep it in the community and keep it in the industries, so that when they retire or decide to have a sea change or a tree change somewhere else, that knowledge doesn't go with them. And conversely, if they want to stay and work in the region, then how can we make that possible? So look, the report is very grounded in solutions. And for us, it was really important, though, that within those solutions, we identify the role that RDA plays. So for us, sometimes it's leading, sometimes it's supporting, advocating, or even partnering with existing initiatives, because there's already some great work being done. There's attraction pieces in terms of think regional has done a really good body of work in terms of what it's like to have a career in regional Australia, and then other things that our local business chambers do. But more importantly, if we're attracting workers, even overseas skilled migrants, how are we keeping them in the region, getting here, and how are they getting a job? So, yeah, we tried to, capture a variety of areas, but also make them really focused at the same time in terms of what are the potential solutions that we see.
One of those initiatives that you were talking about, which kind of piqued my interest, it had an acronym L2PS. And I was like, oh, what is that? And it is literally L's, two P's, in terms of getting young drivers mentored so they can get their license and not have to necessarily rely on public transport, which can be, as we all know, a bit ad hoc in the regional areas.
It can. And from the data we were looking at, so at the moment, connectivity is one of the significant gaps. So I mentioned, not just getting to work, but getting to higher education, which I think is just as important. So if you live in an area which doesn't have access to reliable, frequent public transport, you're probably just going to move to an area that does, which is most likely going to be Sydney or Canberra. So when we look at some of the stats, at the moment in Kiama, only 19% of residents live within 400 metres of regular public transport, and that goes down even more when you go outside to other areas. So yeah, transport is one of the things, and that program specifically is really focused on giving young adults and young people in the region the freedom to be able to get their licenses and then get a car and live their lives, because public transport is a big issue down here.
Another initiative that's working down there is the aircraft maintenance program, which obviously is part of an emerging industry in the region.
Yeah, so defence and defence industry is a large employer in the Shoalhaven, particularly. And that program, that's something that we actually want to see extended. So for us, one of our big priority areas is defence and defence industry. So there are a number of businesses who provide existing services, but they often want to have cadets or trainees. And how do you do that without them having to go up to Sydney and do a day course or a week course or whatever that looks like for them to skill? And so skills, both reskilling and upskilling, came up quite consistently. And for us, that program in particular, it's great that that particular certificate is offered down in the Shoalhaven, but we want to see even more done. We want to see a certificate beyond that, whether it be higher or different. So employers can get their team members in those courses if they want to, or even someone who just is interested in it and they know that, we have a number of careers expos down here. We just held one with Ulladulla, and we had the Illawarra Shoalhaven Regional Defence Network, which we are responsible for attending that. And the amount of interest was incredible. People want to have a career, whether that be in defence, because the Shoalhaven is known as a defence town.
This report is a big slice of the pie. What else is going on for RDA Illawarra Shoalhaven at the moment?
A program that we have been responsible for in partnership with the Illawarra Connection and the University of Wollongong is the Leadership Illawarra program. Now that is in its, I believe, hope I don't get this wrong, 7th cohort, which is an incredible group of local leaders, and this is our largest cohort ever. And that program is really focused on both experiential learning, so site visits. So the group will go to a local business and hear from those local leaders to say, what do you think makes a good leader, or what does success look like for you? And then also the learning components, so the soft skills around leadership development, how to have a difficult conversation, how to support team members, psychosocial risks, all those really important characteristics that aren't just ticking a box in terms of hard skills. For us, that program, very, very popular. We also go down to Canberra on the second year of the program because it's a 2-year program. And so they get to hear directly from our nation's leaders to say, what do you think makes a good leader? And so we're really proud of that program. It's gone from strength to strength, and I can't take all the credit. It's been around for a lot longer than I have been in this role, but I was actually in one of the previous cohorts and I made some incredible connections and incredible friends. And so it's kind of full circle to be like, I was in this cohort and now I'm helping get the next cohort through.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, Selena. I really
Nice.
appreciated it. And I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon.